Hello, and welcome back to the Sandbox asynchronous tutorial on generative AI. This is part 2 of the 4-part series, and in this section we'll be talking about concerns, opportunities, and academic integrity when it comes to the use of generative AI. Before we begin this session, it's very important for me to provide this disclaimer. At Seneca, the use of generative AI is dictated class by class. So you must be speaking with each and every one of your individual instructors to understand if they allow you to use generative AI, where they allow you to use generative AI, and which tools they want you to use. Be sure to always check with your instructor before using generative AI for any classroom activities or assignments. With that in mind, let's begin. As I mentioned in the first part of this tutorial, generative AI tools present us with a lot of exciting opportunities for creation and exploring new ideas. But with those opportunities come some significant concerns and considerations that we should address. So let's get into it. Generative AI tools should be positioned as tools that you can utilize as part of a creation process. They should not be utilized as a way to automate a whole process. The better way of using generative AI is to bring it in as part of the process, but you are still utilizing your critical thinking skills, your creative thought process and problem-solving skills, and everything that makes us better than machines. AI as tools, as part of the process, can maybe elevate our products to a whole new level. But we want to make sure that they are not automating the whole process and automating ourselves out of the thinking process. So it is paramount to consider generative AI tools as part of the process, not as a replacement of the process. When we have that in mind, generative AI tools can be great assistance for brainstorming ideas, helping us conduct research, helping us summarize and outline. They can be fantastic translating tools. They can help you write computer codes. They can help you just genuinely get inspired and ask questions. But there are some significant challenges with generative AI tools that need to be addressed. First, generative AI tools are known to create content and references that are not correct. This happens enough that there's even a term for it. It's called AI hallucinations. Now, this is something that's very important to keep in mind when you are evaluating the information that you're seeing through an AI tool. Make sure you are always utilizing your critical thinking skills and fact-checking to verify any information that AI has presented as fact or truth. We must explore all sources of information and verify. Secondly, AI tools that rely only on large language module training can fall behind. Large language module processing definitely takes a lot of time, and sometimes these tools can fall behind 2, sometimes 3 years. So there's a currency issue that needs to be addressed and needs to be part of your evaluation process when you are looking at the information that an AI tool has presented to you. Thirdly, different tools cover subjects differently. ChatGPT and Copilot can cover almost any topic, but they often only cover those topics in a very shallow or Wikipedia level. Like I mentioned in the first section of this tutorial, there are so many generative AI tools. So many tools that have different focuses, have different knowledge sets, that are designed to perform different tasks. So you might see a very different level of information and different level of depth depending on the tool that you are using. Also, AI tools do not cite where they get their information from. Now, tools like ChatGPT and Copilot have 2 sources of information: their large language module training and access to resources online. These tools will often give you the link for resources that they pulled from online, which is very helpful when we are trying to evaluate the source of information and vet it as a credible source. However, generative AI tools do not cite their training. They cannot pick apart their training. So for example, it can't tell you, I got this sentence from this source that was fed to me on this day, where it was remixed with another source from a different update. It cannot break its training out to provide you a source for where it's getting its information from. So tools that only rely on large language module training can be very difficult sometimes to trace to a source of information to ensure that what it's saying is actually truth and correct. So please be aware of that issue when you are using tools that only rely on large language module training. Lastly, all technology contains built-in bias, so make sure that you are identifying when information might not be completely neutral. It is sometimes difficult to identify bias, but it is part of our critical thinking process to make sure we are highlighting any and all incidents that have a misleading way of phrasing information that might be hiding a bias, so make sure you're looking for those as well. There are some other challenges that I would like to highlight for you as well. The first one is privacy. Now, privacy is a personal choice. You must make informed decisions though. It is important to remember that as we use AI, we are training AI. So always ask yourself, am I comfortable with having this information provided to a large language module training when I don't know exactly how that information is being sold, stored, or shared? And it's also equally as important to make sure that you have consent from everyone that is involved with an AI prompt. So for example, if you are in a meeting on Zoom and somebody invites an AI note taker, you must have consent from everyone on that meeting that they are okay with having AI record their voice and take notes, because they might not feel comfortable with that use of AI or that having that information sold or shared through an AI language module. So make sure that you ask yourself those questions and make sure you have consent from everyone involved. Now, for more information on any of these topics, you can click on the info button in the resources provided in the description of this tutorial, so you can explore in more detail. Another thing to put on your radar is the copyright issue. I'm sure you're all aware of some certain incidences of creators, authors suing AI companies because they had their content fed through large language module training without their consent. So this is definitely a big issue that's been popping up a lot with AI tools. And it is important for us as users of the tool to try to ensure that we are not infringing on other people's copyrighted material. It is a very interesting and complex issue the more we get into it. So hopefully Canadian copyright law can be updated to reinforce some of the copyrighted material from being utilized in AI processing. Deepfakes is something that is very concerning for a lot of people. AI can really manipulate images, video, and sound to really present some misleading ideas and really misrepresent people. Deepfakes have an enormous impact on society, and we need to make sure that we are trying to identify any and all deepfakes that are circulating online so that we can combat misinformation. This is specifically difficult for a lot of people who may not realize that their likenesses have been stolen by AI and repurposed in deepfakes. So it's important to call out deepfakes whenever you see them. The environment. AI has an actual huge environmental impact. One single prompt can equal the amount of a full water bottle of fresh water that is utilized just to make sure that these supercomputers keep running. AI does not just exist in a magical cloud, there are supercomputers that make it available to us, and those supercomputers have a massive electricity drain and a massive water drain. So it is very important to put a spotlight on the environmental impact of artificial intelligence and ensure that we are trying to use it in a more sustainable manner. Sometimes we go to AI for a simple question when we can go to Google instead and get very similar information. Google also has an environmental impact, but it is significantly less than artificial intelligence. So maybe save your artificial intelligence prompt for stuff that cannot be solved through a simple Google search to use it in a little bit more of a sustainable manner. I already talked about hallucinations, but there is some information here to go deeper onto why large language modules hallucinate. Lastly, I also talked about some biases. There's also something that I would like to talk about called algorithmic bias. The more and more we use algorithms to find information online through AI, social media, search engines, the more and more we are siloing ourselves to a specific narrative. There are so many examples of how information spheres have been created in society, and something can happen in the world and one portion of the society sees it in a very different light than a different part of society. And this is because algorithms have created information bubbles around us that really reinforce our own narratives, our own biases, or also even present new ideas that are different for different subsects of society. So algorithmic bias is really an important issue to put a spotlight on as well. All of these are huge issues, huge systematic issues, but it is still important to have an awareness of these as we are utilizing generative AI tools. And it is important to try to utilize these in a more ethical and sustainable manner whenever possible. But I don't like to only focus in on the negatives. There are some great opportunities to utilize it as a student. The Learning Center also offers a workshop called AI and Study Skills that you can take, and you meet with a learning instructor who can help you understand how to utilize AI to improve your study skills. Because when we are using it appropriately, with integrity, it can help us deepen our understanding of a topic, it can help us practice, it can provide very valuable feedback for our content, it can even help us open our own mindsets. Sometimes we have our own preconceived ideas of what a topic should be about, and maybe AI can challenge us or present some different narratives. It can also be a fantastic coach. I work with digital media and with students, and of course I can help students learn some different software, but sometimes students like to learn by themselves. So sometimes maybe if you're learning a new tool or a new technology, maybe you want to consider AI to help coach you through that learning curve. And maybe it can help provide some tips and tricks as you learn a new tool. A very good use of AI. But lastly, utilizing AI is a fantastic opportunity for us to practice and utilize our critical thinking skills. I cannot stress this enough that when we are utilizing generative AI tools and evaluating the outputs it provides, we must be employing a deep level of critical thinking to evaluate everything that we see through AI tools. Now let's talk about academic integrity and generative AI. As a reminder, at Seneca, the use of AI is dictated class by class, so you must be speaking to each and every one of your individual instructors to understand where they see AI appropriate, or if they don't even let you use AI at all in the classroom, and to understand which tools you are allowed to use. At Seneca, we also have an academic integrity policy, and it's been recently updated to reflect generative AI. In the policy, it states that any undeclared use of AI can be considered an academic integrity violation. So first, you must have permission from your instructor to use AI for any assignments or classroom activities. And if you do have permission, you must be transparent about your use of AI. And this is in line with a lot of business, legal, and other professional environments that have a similar policy, where AI is not discouraged, but it must be declared for the sense of transparency around the use of AI. So this academic integrity policy is in line with a lot of professions that you might be joining upon leaving Seneca. So let's talk a little bit more about it. At the library, these are the top 4 questions that we get from students about academic integrity and artificial intelligence. The first one, can I use AI in my assignments? Now, you probably already know the answer to this, but librarians can't answer this question for you. Only your instructor can. So please make sure you're having those conversations with all of your instructors about when and where and how, if you are even allowed to use AI in the classroom. Second, we often get this question as well. Do I have to cite content generated by artificial intelligence? Yes, you do. So when it comes to the use of AI, I like to think about it as 2 main buckets. You can use AI as a source of information, and you can use AI as a tool to help maybe brainstorm some ideas. So if you are allowed to use AI as a source of information, you must cite that like you would any other source of information. So for example, if I had permission to use AI as a source of information, I could go to Copilot and ask a question about climate change. I can see where it got its information from. I can visit the sources and make sure that I use my critical thinking skills to ensure that what has been said through Copilot is an accurate reflection of the sources and that those sources are reputable for this type of information. So then now that I've done that, I can see, okay, AI phrased it like this, and I want to quote that in my assignment, or I want to paraphrase that in my assignment. In this scenario, you would have to provide a citation just like any other source of information. I have information on how to cite from an APA and MLA perspective on the next few slides. But when you're using it as a source of information, it has to be cited like any other source of information. Now, you might have a faculty member who says, oh yes, you can use AI to help brainstorm ideas and even help you come up with an outline for the assignment, but I expect all your sources to be scholarly peer-reviewed articles. So in this example, my faculty member is not allowing me to use AI as a source of information, but they have allowed me to use it as a tool. So as a student who has permission to use it as a tool, how can I be transparent about my use of AI when there's no citation? So in this scenario, the library recommends that you include what we call a disclosure statement. Now, in your assignments, you're all probably very familiar with having a works cited or a reference list. And nowadays, you can now include a section after your works cited for disclosure statements about how and when you used AI. So from a library's perspective, a disclosure statement should have at least 3 parts. It should detail the tool that you used, why you used it, and the prompt that you provided. So for example, I could say, Microsoft's Copilot was used to generate research ideas for this assignment using the following prompt. And then I put the prompt. So a basic disclosure statement has those 3 parts: tool, purpose, prompt. Tool, purpose, prompt. Now, faculty members might ask you to include additional pieces of information, such as not only prompt, but also output. So first and foremost, always follow your instructor's guidelines. But if your instructor says follow the library's guidelines, our guidelines are tool, purpose, prompt. And I have a visualization of what those disclosure statements look like in just a few slides, so bear with me and we'll get to them. Lastly, we get this question quite a bit: are there risks to using AI content as a source? So yes, you can use AI as a source of information if you have permission to do so, but make sure you're still utilizing those critical thinking skill sets that you can identify when the information is biased, outdated, or even false. Because again, it can be biased, it can be outdated, and it can also hallucinate information. So we must make sure we're using our critical thinking skills to evaluate the information that we see and making sure that we are fact-checking. So as long as you do your fact-checking and critical thinking, you can use it as a source of information as long as you have permission and you have that laser focus on critical thinking. So let's look a little bit closer on AI citations. So this is some information on how you can cite AI text from an MLA perspective. You can find all of this information on the MLA guide from the library website under Citation Examples, Artificial Intelligence, and you'll be able to see text generated by an AI tool or an image generated by an AI tool. You can also find this going onto the library website under Citing Sources, and you can find it in APA and MLA guides, but we also have pulled it out for you right here under APA and MLA. Now, you can access this right here, and you can find a lot of the same information that I just showed you. So let's go back for a second. In a works cited list citation from an MLA perspective, you want to have the text of the prompt, and then you want to write the word prompt to showcase that it was a prompt. You want to then provide the name of the AI tool, the version number if known, the name of the company that made the tool, the day, month, year content was generated, and the URL of the tool. So for an example, what is generative AI? Explain it like I'm 5 prompt from ChatGPT, March 14th version from OpenAI, and it was done on March 21st, 2023, and here's the link to the tool. So this is how you cite AI text from an MLA perspective. I also have the information for how to cite images from an MLA perspective. And again, you can find all this on the library website. But when you are creating an image and using it in your work, you might need to have a figure example. So let's say I have an image and I'm using my presentation, I could have like a figure note underneath that says 2 puppies playing by the sea in the style of Renard, prompt from DALL-E version 2, OpenAI, again on March 21st, 2023, and then the URL. So it's a very similar structure for text. You want the text of the prompt, and then the word prompt, the name of the tool, the version number if known, name of company that made the tool, and then the day, month, year content was generated, including the URL of the tool. So again, very similar from citing AI text. And then let's look at APA for a moment. So for an APA perspective, this is how you'd be citing it in your references. You want your developer, the version year, the name of the generative AI tool, the version number, the type of AI model, and the URL of the tool. So let's look at that example. OpenAI, period, 2023 in parentheses, period, ChatGPT in italics, and then in parentheses again, March 23rd version, and then in square parentheses, large language module, and then the URL of the tool. So a little bit different, but still very similar in many ways. And then citing from an APA perspective on images, again, you're going to want to have a figure note, and then you can say image generated using this prompt, 2 puppies playing by the sea in the style of Renard by OpenAI, DALL-E 2023, and then the URL for the tool. And again, you can see it down here. We want to see the developer's name, the version year, the name of the AI tool, the version number, the type of AI model, and the URL of the tool. So again, they follow similar perspectives, whether you're citing AI text or images, with a couple differences. So make sure you have that focus on those nuances for properly citing AI stuff in your assignments if you have permission to do so. Lastly, here's that visualization of a disclosure statement. So not using AI as a source of information or as an image generator. More, these disclosure statements are focused on how AI was used as a tool. So you can see on screen the examples here. Microsoft's Copilot was used to generate research ideas and questions for this assignment using the following prompt. So again, those 3 pieces: tool, purpose, prompt in the disclosure statements. To conclude this section of the asynchronous tutorial on generative AI, I would like to remind you of some helpful resources that are available on the Seneca Library's website. As you just saw in the previous section of this tutorial, there's a lot of great content that can be found under the Citing Sources button here underneath the search bar for how to cite information that is generated by artificial intelligence utilizing this section over here. In addition to the Citing Sources resources, I want to remind you that we also do have a generative AI guide that can be found on the homepage right here. And in this guide, you will find a lot of great information, including information on AI and academic integrity. A couple other helpful resources beyond the Seneca Library's website are Seneca's Academic Integrity Policy. This is a great policy to review before utilizing AI so that you ensure that you are meeting all the standards that are set out in this policy. In addition to the Academic Integrity Policy, we also have a Generative AI policy that would be very beneficial to review before utilizing generative AI in any classroom settings. And as always, make sure you have permission from your instructor before utilizing generative AI in any assignments or any classroom activities. Thank you so much for taking the time to review this video. I'll see you in part 3 for the asynchronous tutorial on generative AI. Thank you.